if you are going out live on FINA TV and cbcsports.ca. Moments away from our introduction of our officials. And the introduction of our athletes competing in this, the men's 3-meter synchro finals. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the athletes participating in the men's 3-meter synchro finals. Ladies and gentlemen, Team United States of America, Manuel Borowski, Maxwell Weinrich. That's it. Good luck, gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, always our pleasure to introduce our officiating panel, as well as our FINA Technical Diving Committee member, Colleen Huffman. There are 11 judges in this event. 6 will be looking at the execution of diver A and diver B, and the rest will be looking at the synchronization of the athletes. Your referee for this event, Ainsley Oliver. Assistant referee, Stefan Lorte. Judge number 1, Steve Power. Judge number 2, Stuart Graymore. Judge number 3, Gail Archambault. Judge number 4, Sarah Toth. Judge number 5, Kim Fain. Judge number 6, Cam McLean. Judge number 7, Hugo Parise. Judge number 8, Victoria Tomlinson. Judge number 9, Aaron Barrett. Judge 10, Jamie Benavides. And Judge 11, Carol McPherson.
Fourth and final day of the 2022 Canada Cup diving competition. It's the FINA Grand Prix back after a couple of years of absence due to COVID. And our final day continues with the final in the men's 3-meter synchro competition. Just one team is taking part. It's a team from the United States of America. Manny Borowski and Max Weinrich will be competing for us. 5 dives, 2 compulsories, followed by 3 of their choosing with more degree of difficulty. And had a chance to talk with Sean McCarthy a few moments ago, one of the USA coaches, asking him about the importance of his team taking part in this, even though there are no other teams competing against them in this given situation. And he said, Courtney, joining me alongside, Courtney Hattie, I should say, former member of Canada's national team. And he said something very interesting. He said, look, we don't care if there's 1 team or 10. We've got a game plan for these guys. This is part of a longer vision. It's part of a season schedule for them. And so they need to go about this as part of putting building blocks in place to get a little bit better. So we look forward to seeing these guys compete in just a few moments in the men's 3-meter synchro final. All set to go. It is the men's 3-meter synchro finals. Mitch Peacock along with Courtney Hattie, former national team member and competitor at Texas A&M. Speaking of the state of Texas, Manny Borowski out of the University of Texas and Max Weinrich set to go. Max out of Brooksville, that is Brookville, Maryland. And you see the competitors before you now getting set to begin with the back dive in the pike position. And as you see them now, on the left is Max Weinrich, on the right, Manny Borowski.
Great first dive. I mean, they're only competing against themselves, but I think what's great in competitions like this is there's almost no pressure to compete against other people, so you get to be strong, powerful, you're not cautious. That was a really nice back dive, really great synchronization, and I think a really nice dive for them to actually start on. And in the men's synchro, they still stick to those 6 dives, so we're gonna see 2 of one direction, and in this event, it will be the twisting direction.
So 2 compulsories followed by 4 of higher degree of difficulty. Round 1 of 6. And you see the scores for Borowski and Weinrich. The coach on the right, the aforementioned Sean McCarthy, who also made the comment that getting a chance to compete in front of international judges is a very valuable experience for any athlete. And I liked his comment. He said, judges equal truth, a little truth to take home for these athletes. So you can talk to them in training and you can tell them how you think they're doing and all of those things, but you know from being a competitor, Courtney, when you're out there and the judges are putting up scores, that's where you're getting your real feedback.
100%, and I mean, there's no favoritism from the judges, but it is nice to get to know them and have a good conversation with them, and then they know who you are, and there's almost a bit of a relationship there. So yes, I agree, it's good to get their faces in front of these judges. They'll hopefully see a lot more of in the future.
They're getting set to go for round number 2, the second of the compulsory dives. It'll be the reverse dive in the pike position. Mentioned that Weinrich is from Brookville, Maryland. At the 2022 USA Diving Regionals, he won gold in both the 3-meter and 10-meter for 16 to 18-year-olds. So you can see the progression for these athletes. They have success in those age group categories, building into these open competitions.
Very much so, and Manuel's coach, Matt Scoggin in Texas, he's one of the best coaches in the world, in my opinion. He is wonderful, and Manuel's very lucky to be able to dive with him.
Just 19 years of age, so getting those important years in with somebody of the pedigree of Matt Scoggin. Got it started off with 47.4 in total. Final of the compulsory dives for Weinrich and Borowski.
Slightly off their synchronization in the hurdle. Managed to get it back together when they jumped off the board and get into that synchronization once they get in their pike. It's so difficult because once you get going in that hurdle, there's no stopping. There's not a lot of time for change to try to match up for your person. So ultimately, they really executed that nicely once they got off the diving board.
Something they were working on in the warm-up just before coming out. I heard Coach McCarthy discussing the synchronization with them, and you see they're very open to the feedback. Big part of being an elite athlete is being able to take that feedback, because everybody's trying to get just that little bit better every day.
Yes, and I mean, as an athlete, the feedback is never criticism. So I've always appreciated it, and I know most people too. The best thing too at these events is all the coaches are together, and sometimes something's not working between a coach and an athlete, and they pull over another coach and say, can you just say this a different way, and it clicks. It's really an interesting concept.
I think we've all been through that different ways, maybe not in a competitive sporting environment, but somebody's telling you something and it's just not sinking in, and you get it from another perspective and you're able to make a move forward. You see they're pretty relaxed, all right, enjoying things here in Calgary. You should mention that these two gentlemen have been in competition here already this week. Weinrich was 5th in semifinal A in the men's 3 meters. Well, it was Borowski finishing 11th in the preliminary round in the men's 3 meters. 3rd amongst the Americans, only 2 spots available in the semifinals, so he wasn't able to advance despite finishing 11th in the preliminary round. But these guys wanting to get as much experience in as they can when they come to these international competitions. So they compete individually and now here as a synchro team. And we go from the compulsory phase on to the next round, and they're going to begin this phase with the forward 2.5 with a twist in pike position. Degree of difficulty 3.0.
It will be interesting to see which direction they each twist. Just a bit of missynchronization on the board there. Manny jumping just a little bit higher in his hurdle. Still landing in the water at the same time, but when there's, especially in a twisting dive, it becomes much more noticeable that they're out of sync. More noticeable to the judges, more noticeable to the people watching.
Yeah, there's something about those twisting dives where it seems to just exaggerate the little difference between the two.
Yeah, well, there's so much going on, so when they're not in perfect sync, you can really tell.
Manny giving himself a little therapy between dives as they see the judges' scores. Pretty good scores, ranging from 5.5 to 7.5 on execution. They continue to work on synchronization. You can see he continues to work on that sore spot on his back as well. Does Manny Borowski. He was a bronze medalist on the 1 meter at the Big 12 championship this year. Quite an accomplishment, and we know there's a progression within the U.S. college ranks as well. You've got those head-to-head competitions between universities, then you've got competitions that take place on a conference level. You work your way on to nationals. That's an interesting stepping stone or pathway for athletes as well as a measuring stick to see how your game is coming along.
It really is, yeah, and who you're competing against at what time, and when you finally get to compete against the best, or the best in whose conference and across nationally. It's very hard to explain to somebody who doesn't actually know the college, what it's like down there. I talk about conference and people just shake their head.
Conference or maybe division might be something that Canadians are more receptive to in terms of the language, but you've got a group of schools that you compete against on a regular basis over the course of a schedule, and you have a conference championship, work your way on to a national championship. And we've seen a number of NCAA divers here this weekend, and it's an important pathway for development. And so on to round number 4 in the men's 3 meter synchro final. And round 4 means a forward 3.5 pike position for Borowski and Weinrich.
similar to their last hurdle dive, just not finding that perfect in syncness coming off the diving board. A bit of a stompy hurdle from Manny. I've spoken about that before. Just not catching the rhythm of the board and being patient with it. Sometimes getting a little bit too anxious to get off the diving board and do your dive. To add to that, maybe a little bit anxious because you can see your partner going a little bit quicker than you. There's a lot of factors to it. They're still entering the water at the same time, just spinning at different times.
So as a non-former diver, I'm interested in your feedback, because the temptation would be to want to keep up with the person beside you, but you've got to really read and react to the board and able to be able to execute, right?
Yeah, so you have to execute your own dive first, and with much practice, hopefully that's at the same time as your partner. But if you're not practicing that much, you kind of just come to these events, you hope for the best. You might tweak something here and there, but you don't want to change your whole style and technique just to match up with somebody else.
Right, so there's a real evolution that takes place when you get used to working with a partner, and we're seeing that unfolding before our eyes here with the American pairing of Manuel Borowski and Maxwell Reinrich. Working their way through 4 of the 6 rounds. They've totaled 194.19 points. Their next dive has a degree of difficulty of 3.0, but their last dive of 3.4, so they're building to their most difficult dive, and it's interesting to see how individuals and pairings put together their dive lists.
Yeah, and often athletes do what's best for them, but then when you're pairing it with someone else, you have to find a middle ground. But ultimately, they usually start with what they're best at, finish with what they're best at, put whatever's, you know, maybe not perfect in the middle. And that stands true for synchro partners also, because they must agree that they have their top dives and then their not so top dives.
So there may be some negotiation going into this, is what you're saying. These guys are getting set to go again. It's a unique situation with them being the only team here in this particular event. They've got to go at a pace that suits them. Want to make sure that they're recovered and have good focus to be able to take on the next challenge, which in this case is the inward 2.5 pike position. Weinrich in the near ground, Borowski in the foreground. Close up of the competitor, the University of Texas.
Very nice. That was definitely one of the best dives we've seen thus far. 4 out of their 6 dives are hurdle dives, so this was not a hurdle dive. They have great synchronization on and off the board. Inward 2.5 pike, not an easy dive. You have to really calculate where your legs are, where the board is. It can be really easy to nip your toes, your heels on this dive. That was a really nice synchronized dive from the 2 of them.
So your observation's an important one in terms of their synchronization. It would seem to make sense that they would have better synchronization on a dive like this as opposed to one that involves a different type of approach, the hurdle.
Yes, and they used the back dive as one of their compulsories, where they could have potentially used the back 2.5 as one of their optionals, keeping it in that standing position to start the dive. But it also is ultimately what works best for them as a pair.
Saw the scores a moment ago, ranging from 5.5 to 8 on the individual side of things. From a synchronization standpoint, 6s to 7s for the American duo, Borowski and Weinrich. Now with 252.69 points with 1 dive to go. Talked about the value of them taking part in this, even if they are operating on their own. They will get FINA medals for taking part in this. There's prize money as well. So that's important in the big picture.
Yeah, and it's, you know, it's nice for this event. There really is no pressure on them except for themselves, and they kind of get to see, they get to test the limits, and they get to walk away with the Grand Prix gold medal.
You know, and I think there is something to the maturity of an athlete to be in a situation like this and to be able to make the most of it, right? Because it would be easy to say, well, there's nobody else I'm competing against. The crowd isn't necessarily into it the same way as if there were 4 or 5 teams. But to be able to say, I don't care what's happening around here. This is part of my plan for the year. This is really important that I take advantage of these reps. I don't get a lot of opportunity maybe to work with this partner. So let's make this fun, but yeah, business-like as well, so we can take something from it.
Exactly. And I mean, the great part about having the Grand Prix medal is that it's there, it's on your, you know, wherever you look it up. But the other important part of that is the score. You don't want to have a FINA gold medal with a score of 5.
So you put a good number up beside that. They got a chance to wrap it up in a positive way here. The final dive, forward 2.5, 2 twists, pike position. The most difficult dive on their list is how they've chosen to wrap it up.
So they started off their optionals with the forward 2.5 single twist, and now they're finishing it up with the forward 2.5 double twist. Putting some pressure on themselves here. Well, the entries for both of them were beautiful. Manny not doing a proper hurdle. It happens when you start to lean forward in your hurdle, your chest is forward. You can't get that proper arm swing that you want. It's not showing in the replay, but there's a bit of panic before he gets to the end of the board, making him behind Max, not landing in the water at the same time, but still beautiful entries from each. So hopefully some good points for their individual dive.
See those scores coming along. You can tell Manny's not at 100% physically. He's gutting it out here, giving it his best, but favoring that one side on the back. And there are the execution scores, 5s to 8s, and the synchronization numbers as well. And a little bit of attention there for Manny Borowski as he works his way through this. A smile from Max Weinrich. And it will be a gold medal for the United States. And maybe there's a little bit of fun in that celebration, recognizing that they were the only team, but they got the reps in. They got the chance in front of the international judges. And they got a chance to continue on their plan for the season, which Coach Sean McCarthy said was very important. And I think it's interesting to have that perspective and not just see this as 2 people out diving and others wondering why we're not just getting on with the rest of the program. This is part of the schedule. It's an important event. And these guys have it as part of their game plan for the year. And so well done to the Americans, Weinrich and Borowski, who participated individually at 3 meters and now take care of business in the men's 3-meter synchro. And well, the day is nicely underway here at the MNP Community and Sports Center. We had a 10-meter synchro victory for Brazil. The United States takes care of the men's 3-meter synchro, and we're on to the 10-meter synchro for women. Coming up, that's our next event. It's just around the corner. Women's 10-meter synchro coverage getting underway at 14:30 local time here in the Mountain Time Zone.
Even elite athletes need support to reach their goals. Pour aller plus loin que ceux et celles avant eux et pour laisser un sport meilleur à ceux et celles qui les suivront. AthletesCAN represents members of Canada's senior national teams who compete at multi-sport and world championship events. Nous avons pour mission de parler d'une seule voix puissante en faveur d'un système sportif centré sur l'athlète, where athlete rights are respected, où les préoccupations des athlètes sont entendues et prises en compte, and where athletes influence key decisions made in Canada's sports system. Nous formons des athlètes leaders qui influencent les politiques du sport et inspirent une solide culture sportive. We're a safe and inclusive place to share your perspectives and concerns on the issues you care about. Et ensemble, nous suscitons et réalisons des changements. We were the first organization founded by national team athletes for athletes. Depuis, nous avons toujours été des leaders mondiaux en matière de représentation des athlètes. Join AthletesCAN. Vous y êtes chez vous.
Moments away from the victory ceremony for the mixed 10-meter synchro and the men's 3-meter synchro event. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your medalists and our presenters for the mixed 10-meter synchro event here at the FINA Diving Grand Prix. The medals and flowers will be presented by Senior Sales Executive, Calgary Marriott, Kate Woodward. Your silver medalists from Canada, Caitlin Fung, Matt Cullen. Total score of 243.03 points for Caitlin and Matt. With a score of 281.76 points. Your gold medalists, your FINA Diving Grand Prix Canada Cup champions from Brazil, Ingrid Oliveira, Kewan Pereira. Ladies and gentlemen, the anthem of Brazil. Ladies and gentlemen, your FINA Diving Grand Prix medalists.
Vive sempre a beber e anda pelos cantos esperando por você. Vive de noite e dorme de dia. Tem o sangue quente, mas sua estratégia é fria. Ela anda sempre a armar o bote. O som pode ser funk, rap, axé ou pagode. Tome cuidado com essa criatura. Ela tá solta na cidade por todas as ruas. de todas. Que eu vou que nada fanfarrão snake. She's gonna get you looking at the fanfarrão snake. She's gonna get you looking at the fanfarrão snake. She's gonna get you looking at the fanfarrão snake. She's gonna get you the fanfarrão snake is gonna get you. She's the most fanfarrão of all. 'Cause I'm going. She's the most fanfarrão of all.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your medalists and our presenter for the men's 3 meters synchro championship here at the FINA Diving Grand Prix, Calgary, Canada Cup. The medals will be presented by Director of Sales and Marketing, Calgary Marriott Downtown, Glenn Isles. In third position, in second, ladies and gentlemen, your gold medalists, your Calgary Canada Cup champions from the United States of America, Manuel Borowski Maxwell Weinrich. It was a close competition all the way through, but that final dive really nailed it for Team USA. Ladies and gentlemen, the anthem of the United States of America. Ladies and gentlemen, your FINA Diving Grand Prix Calgary Canada Cup medalists.
Yeah, you can be the greatest, you can be the best. You can be King Kong banging on your chest. You could be the world, you could be the war. You could talk to God, go banging on his door. You can throw your hands up, you can beat the clock. You can move a mountain, you can break rock. You could be the master, don't wait for